Yeah.
All right, it's a Wednesday. Lucy is in the kitchen with us. Lucy, it's the perfect weather for soup.
I know. I thought I was like, oh, it's going to be rainy. Didn't know it was going to be, such bad weather. So yes, the perfect day for soup. We're doing a ground turkey, kale, and white bean soup. So easy. And when I talk about the ingredients, it's like, okay, it just seems like it's not going to have that much flavor, but it does.
Yeah,
it really
for sure.
comes together so quick and easy. I just have a couple of teaspoons of olive oil down in our big soup pot. So I just added 1 pound of ground turkey in here, or you could use whatever you like. And also, if you are meat-free, this is a great recipe just to make a couple of tweaks. You don't even have to use the turkey. And then we're going to use chicken broth. You can just sub it out for veggie and then just add a couple more beans. So just super easy to change it to meat-free. So now I'm just going to add, I have a small onion here and a couple ribs of celery and a couple carrots that I just chopped up. So we're just going to let this go for about 15 minutes. We just want to soften up those veggies and of course let the turkey cook through. So it does come together pretty quick.
Yeah, I love this because this is packed with so much goodness, like good flavor, but also good things in it as well, with the kale, the beans, all the good stuff. What kind of seasonings will you use over here?
So I'm going to turn this up. We can hit it to high heat, and then we are going to add, after this cooks, we're going to add a few cloves of garlic, fresh garlic, and then we're just going to use stuff you probably already have in your pantry, which is what I like to use. We have dried oregano, dried thyme, we have salt and pepper, and just some red pepper flakes as well. So, and just remember too, soup is the best thing to freeze. You know, we talk a lot about freezing. It's kind of like subscriptions. Like forgetting your subscription is also like when you put stuff in the freezer, then you forget it too.
Screaming, please use me.
Yeah, but soup really is the best thing. So if you want to, and that's kind of something I try to use my freezer a little bit better.
Yeah.
But soup is definitely a good one to an introductory freezer situation.
Yeah. So the freezer is an interesting thing because if I throw a soup in there, I will eventually reheat it. Like 2 weeks away, I'll reheat it and think about it. But if I throw some leftover turkey, ground turkey, I'm like, when did I use that?
I'm the same way.
I'll just toss it.
Yes, I know.
So maybe write a date on there or something. Use by, please, and put exclamation marks under it. I love this recipe, Lucy. We love a good soup, but in our house, it's hard to get creative sometimes because we always think of taco soup.
Yeah.
Recently, we've added the white chicken chili to the mix, but this is just something oh so delicious and easy that we can add to the rotation.
Yeah, this one's good, especially for kids like Scotty's age, where you can pick out the softened veggies, I know she's not big on meat, but you can pick out the beans, pick out the veggies, and she may even go for the kale.
She may, yeah.
It really, and the producer Danielle, she was saying that she wants to find more ways to incorporate kale. Kale was, it's still big, but it was super big, of course, a few years ago.
Right.
But it's still it's easy, just like spinach, just to throw in there. You don't even know it's there.
Yeah,
so this is a good one for that.
All right, we will work on this. Also, I want to mention, I didn't take a picture because we ate it too fast. So we made the pesto burgers Saturday.
Oh, good.
So my husband does not like mayo whatsoever. And I was like, Johnny, these pesto burgers, and he was like, no, I'm cool with it as long as it's not just mayo if it's mixed.
Yeah.
He said about 4 times, these burgers are so good.
Oh,
and I said, yeah, it's Lucy's recipe. So
I'm glad.
Yeah, so the pesto burgers, you can find that recipe if you didn't see it on our website, fox10tv.com. It was delicious.
Yay,
this will be delicious too. We'll continue this with Lucy coming up. Vanessa.
We are back in the kitchen with Lucy. And Lucy, you and I talked before the show. I was like, soup? Perfect.
I know.
Perfect right now. Aside from the weather, I know I'm not the only one that's feeling congested and stuff like that. So soup is a go-to right now.
Absolutely. And this one is full of good stuff that'll really give you some energy, and to it's really healing just because we have our veggies in here. We started with ground turkey and we added carrot, celery, onion, and we've just been cooking this down for about 15 minutes. And I just added a few cloves of fresh garlic. And I'm going to add some spices. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper and a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. We have a 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme, 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. So just going to mix that in, and then we are going to add 1 can. I like to use the fire roasted tomatoes.
Okay.
And it's not spicy. It just has more of like a smoky flavor.
Okay.
But if you don't want to use those, you could just use, I mean, any canned tomato is totally fine. And I'm going to go ahead and add those in. And then I have 1 can of, I'm just using Great Northern, the white beans, and I just drained and rinsed those off. So it's just 1 can of these. And then I'm going to add in 6 cups of chicken broth here. And I mentioned to Chelsea earlier, if you did want to make this soup meat-free, you could just omit the turkey, just go in, saute those veggies, and then you could just do 2 or 3 cans of the beans and just use veggie broth, and you could totally make this meat-free, and it would still have an amazing flavor. So I'm going to add 6 cups of that, and now I'm going to bring it up to a boil. And once it starts boiling, we'll add in our kale. I just have it's a 16-ounce bag, already used half of it, so we're just going to use the other 8 ounces of kale. And I was mentioning too that I caught Danielle in the hallway, and the producer for the show, and she was like, "Oh, good! I'm glad you're making this." You know, she wants to like kale. I feel like a lot of people want to like kale, and she said that she has had a soup that she really liked it, but then has had a couple things where she didn't like it as much. So this is a great way, or spinach. Of course, you could use spinach or any green that you wanted to use, but I feel like that kale was so big, everyone was using kale, and I feel like it kind of like dipped out a little bit, but I still like to use it in cases like this. Like, just adding it in. And my mom, I told her I was going to bring her some soup, and she was like, "Kale, like big eyes." I'm like, "Are you scared of kale?" And so, it's not scary.
I think what
it's
it is,
scary.
and I don't know if I speak for many people, but kale is that texture is a little bit, it's like tough, rough.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But putting it in a soup, I'm sure that will soften it up.
Absolutely. So we're going to let it cook. So once this comes up to a boil, we'll add in our kale, and it's just, it won't wilt down as much as spinach, but it'll wilt down in here. And then we're just going to simmer it for 30 minutes, and it'll be ready to eat. So definitely, adding kale into, a lot of different soups is a good way to get it in there. It's not scary.
All right. Well, I'm definitely waiting for this to, we'll put the kale in, so maybe, soothe my throat a little bit.
Yes, this is perfect for you.
All right. We'll have more on this, and we'll definitely come back to the finished product. I'm going to toss things over to Chelsea. We are back in the kitchen with Lucy Greer. Okay, things are smelling amazing.
They are. This is our ground turkey and white bean and kale soup. Talked a lot about kale earlier. If you're scared of it, this is a good time to try it. Don't need to be scared of it. So we started out with our ground turkey. We added some celery, carrots, onions, cooked that down, did a little bit of garlic, and seasoned it up. And then we added a can of fire roasted tomatoes. You could use whatever tomatoes you like. We added chicken broth and a can of white beans that I just drained and rinsed, and I brought that up to boil, and now I just added in 8 ounces of kale. And I mentioned that it is certainly going to wilt down. It's not going to wilt down as much as spinach, but we're now going to simmer this for 30 minutes, and like we were talking about the texture of kale, it is heartier for sure, but the 30-minute, it'll just melt down right in there, and you really won't even notice it's there. But especially when you're feeling under the weather, like and you've had a few days of just not getting a lot of nutrients, this is a really good recipe to kind of help get some of that energy back.
Now, we were talking about, I'm not a big fan of like the chunks of tomatoes, but you said we can swap that out for like smaller tomatoes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I typically buy the petite diced tomatoes. It's a smaller dice on the canned tomatoes, or like you said, if you just don't want a tomato at all, then you could just put in a can of crushed tomatoes. It'd be fine. So that's the great thing about cooking. If you don't like something or you don't like onions, if Vanessa doesn't really like onions, then just omit that.
I know.
And it's not gonna change things too much, and that's what's great. Just don't put in things you don't like, and just make it your own.
Well, this is definitely a great recipe for someone like myself that's like feeling a little bit under the weather, but also with the weather today.
Yes, absolutely. So I know Jen's going to tell us when the weather's coming in. So if you want to make this, run out and get this stuff. You have time, and you can just hopefully feel better after you eat it.
Oh, no,
or just
for
cozy
sure,
up.
for sure. All right, thank you, Lucy, for this recipe. And of course, we'll have all of that on our website, fox10tv.com.